Hi, I'm Rachel, and welcome to my 5783 Hanukkah short story reading vlog. This is my annual tradition where for every night of Hanukkah, I share a short story with you, sitting here or standing here in front of my lit menorah. So here I am on night one, and I am starting this short story collection. This is called It's a Whole Spiel, Love, Latkes, and Other Jewish Stories, edited by Catherine Locke. And I believe the vast majority of the authors in the anthology are Jewish YA authors. So I decided to choose this collection because I thought it would be fun and light and easy to get through. So the first story in here is called Indoor Kids by Alex London, and unfortunately it really wasn't much to my taste. It's about a couple of teen camp counselors at a sports camp who aren't very sporty themselves and spend most of their time obsessing over a NASA mission that's in trouble, which on its own makes me think, whoa, this is pretty serious stuff. Maybe, there should be a more serious focus, but instead it's a bit of a backdrop to a teen romance between two of the Jewish male counselors. So I felt like too much was going on, and too much of it was quirkiness rather than anything with substance, including the Jewish characterization of these two characters, who I thought were relatively interchangeable. The love interest of the protagonist is the one who has more Jewish knowledge. He grew up with his parents in far-flung diasporic communities and talks about the golem a little bit and emet for truth, how you animate the golem, and obviously the protagonist doesn't know what that means. Then he talks about saying the Shachachianu prayer in the desert, which is the prayer of renewedness, which is cool, but again, no substance really, I think, behind it. It's kind of similar, too, I think, to the main character who came out around the time of his bar mitzvah. And, it's supposed to mean something about, coming of age as a Jew and also recognizing your identity in the queer community. But, again, it was all quirk over substance to me. I just really couldn't connect with the story or the characters at all in this case, and I thought that was relatively disappointing for night one, but we have 7 more nights ahead of us, so hopefully things will go up from here. It is night 2 of Hanukkah, and I'm going to talk about Two Truths and an Oi by Dahlia Adler. In this short story, Amalia, or Molly, is an Orthodox Jewish young woman who is going to school to college in New York, a secular college, and education for the first time in her life. She's in fact a year older than most college freshmen because she took a year abroad to study in Israel, or was encouraged to by her family. But she is very excited to sort of get away from all of the Jewish trappings of her upbringing, that, she's always only gone to Jewish schools and been in Jewish neighborhoods, so she really knows very little about the outside world, and she really wants to meet new people and be part of that world in that way, and is excited to get beyond what she knows in her modern Orthodox way. But the story is about her first day of orientation, and she just keeps putting her foot in her mouth because she's just so self-conscious and self-centered in her way about what does she sound like. And every time she mentions being Jewish at all to sort of have a marker to say about herself, she gets freaked out about that because she really wants to be known as something else, or find a new identity. So and she's just so, it can be difficult, I think, to read her character, especially from some distance, because she's just so self-involved in her self-centered anxiety. And ultimately she has to break from the group because she keeps kosher, so when they go off campus for lunch, she knows there won't be any kosher options there, so she stays on campus to eat, and is worried because oh no, they're going to be bonding without me. And then she's in the cafeteria, and of course the person that she steps up to bond with is a man, a new student with a kippah, with a yarmulke, and he's Modern Orthodox as well, and even though he comes from somewhere else, they of course have a frame of reference and people they might know in common. And anyway, I thought that, I have some empathy, I guess, for that situation, even generally, just about, how self-centered you can be, going into a new situation, meeting new people at that age, worrying about, how do you come off to someone or groups of someone who are, outside of your own milieu if you kind of want to grow and change in that way. I feel like the ultimate thing, that sort of the story grasps at a little, is that you don't have to, completely reinvent yourself. I don't know, there's always going to be some comfort, when you have some shared experiences, and I don't know, ultimately I feel like if she actually wants to meet new people outside of the Jewish community, that comfort would come with time, and joining activities and, student groups and that sort of thing. But, this story was very slight, and it only took place around an orientation event. And I liked it well enough, although, I could tell that her, Amalia's extreme self-centeredness can be a little eye-roll inducing as well. But, I don't know, it was a nice slice of life. It is night 3 of Hanukkah, and I'm talking about the story Aftershocks by Rachel Lynn Solomon. In this story, Miri, or Miriam, is a young Jewish girl in Seattle, but really the most Jewish thing about her is that name. She comes from a very assimilated family and seems to have little to no knowledge of Judaism, but is kind of excited that she has it in common with a boy she's crushing on. They're part of the debate team together in school. They're about 15, I believe. He is much more religious. His name is Aaron, and in fact, once they decide to start dating after some cute movie events together, he in fact invites her over for a Shabbat dinner with his family. And Miri is very anxious about this because, she's thinking she's going to be seen as an imposter because she knows little to nothing about Judaism. And also, on top of that, she has some anxiety and OCD. So basically, she is a bit of a mess, just, kind of in her own head and anxious about everything, and has to recheck the car several times because of the OCD, make sure it's locked. And then, she sits down to dinner, and pretty much immediately, she is out of her element. One of the major things is that she decides to try to go and eat the challah. She's trying to make a good impression, say, oh, it looks delicious, so she goes to grab it before they've said the chamotzi, the blessing over the bread. But just at that moment, because they live in Seattle, there's an earthquake that hits. And so everybody has to, hide under the table, and everything above is thrown into disarray, at least the food and everything. Luckily it doesn't seem like there's too much sustaining damage, but because of the possibility of aftershocks, once Miri is able to call home, her parents say she should stay there for a while and not drive back. So Aaron takes her aside. They're filling a bathtub as part of post-earthquake preparations, and they're trying to get on the right foot again, but I feel like Aaron also didn't really realize how ignorant of Judaism Miri really was. So she's feeling more and more kind of on the outskirts and the outside, especially once they do return to the family. The parents lay heavily into how excited they are that Aaron found a Jewish girlfriend in this heavily non-Jewish suburb, and they're pressing her, where'd you get your bat mitzvah? What was your theme? What congregation do you and your parents go to? And Miri has a panic attack, basically, because and it's not really resolved, I suppose, how she and the parents ultimately get along. Maybe it's not really important for that age group, It's not like we're looking at marriage here or anything. So the big thing is that she and Aaron are ultimately able to sort of come to an understanding together that even though their Judaism is a tenuous, linker at best, they still really care about each other, and the author really put in a lot about, their quirkiness, about their debate team ways together. So, they have the cute little rapport together. So it seems like it's a nice, sweet little story about people coming together, even though, there's some significant differences in their religious upbringings, or lack thereof in Miri's case. It is the 4th night of Hanukkah, and I'm discussing the short story El Al 328 by Dana Schwartz. This refers to the Israeli airline, and the specific story in here is about a trip of college students returning from Birthright. Birthright Israel is a program that takes college-age students from the U.S. primarily to Israel to, learn about the country and, foster connections with one another. One of the major selling points really is about fostering, the idea of marrying Jewish, and it's seen as a big, hookup culture thing. And that's really what the major crux of this story is for the main character. The main character is named Fee, and unlike her roommate Emma, she has not been able to hook up in Israel, and she's feeling like this is a major failing on her part in terms of the proper birthright experience. So this story, although, technically it's about this trip to Israel, there's only a few real references to the actual Israel trip, and most of the action takes place when the flight home is diverted in Dublin due to weather. And Emma and Fee and a bunch of their contemporaries from their college in the Midwest are in their hotel rooms for their 5-hour layover, and instead of sleeping they decide to play spin the bottle. And Fee is sort of desperately thinking maybe she can finally use it to hook up with the guy that Emma says is interested in her, except that he doesn't really respond. And I feel like after a bunch of quirky stories about really nice teenagers, that are kind of like the Dawson's Creek of the 21st century teens, these teens are more of assholes to one another, and it just seems like in general they are more self-absorbed but not in the way of the other teenagers who were self-absorbed in thinking, how do I make a good impression? These teenagers just didn't seem to care about each other. It was almost a breath of fresh air in a way to a more cynical take on teens, I suppose. But I do feel at the end of it that Fee ultimately disentangled from some toxic individuals, so hopefully when she gets back home she can reorient herself and have a better experience where she doesn't get so caught up in the whole hookup culture gestalt. It is the 5th night of Hanukkah, and I'm discussing the story He Who Revives the Dead by Elie Lichtschein. I'm certainly hoping I'm saying that name correctly, because this so far is my favorite story of the vlog. Very exciting, and it's my justification for the fact that there's a lot of similarities to last night's story, in that it starts on an airplane and it involves a birthright trip, except in this case they're actually traveling to Israel this time. So we get to see a lot more Israeli influence in this, but there's a lot more going on as well. We're following the character Raish, short for Rachel, and she is on this birthright trip, and she has a very specific reason for doing so, in that she had a near-death experience at home, and has gone to Israel to sort of try to convince herself that she's still alive, and that she doesn't have to live in fear, particularly of water, because her near-death experience happened in water. And this plays into the title because ultimately she befriends a group of students and their Israeli tour guide on Birthright, and she shares her story, and the Israeli tour guide gives the blessing for God who revives the dead. And so, from there, there's a lot going on that I really like. There's a lot of, there's talk about Israel and Israeli politics that I don't think gets polarizing or moralistic. I mean, it really gets into legitimate feelings and disputes that people have. There's no romance in this one, but I feel like the platonic relationships are very genuine, and I just feel like out of all the stories, these ones felt the most authentic to me, and it was just such a great mix of the broader Jewish themes and also this internal thing that Rachel Raish was going through, and yes, she does ultimately get into a body of water and is able to at least start to conquer some of those fears. So yeah, I just thought it was firing on all cylinders, and I'm really glad to have read this story. It is night 6 of Hanukkah, and I'm here to talk about Neilah by Hannah Moscowitz, the next short story in this collection. Neilah refers to the concluding liturgy of Yom Kippur. And indeed, this story takes place on Yom Kippur on a college campus. Our protagonist is a new student who has a new girlfriend. It's a gay relationship, and the protagonist is somebody who, like a lot of these characters, has not grown up with a lot of Jewish knowledge or know-how, but has found herself getting into the community thanks to, someone she's involved with, this girlfriend Mira. And so Mira takes her to the campus's Yom Kippur services, and it's just such a sweet, quick little rendition of some of the stuff that happens there. There's like a minor, sort of truncated sermon that is meaningful in its way. It's like not as, big and complicated, at least as the sermons I know, but I think it really touches on that spiritual element and goes into some of the biblical background and the Hebrew, of course, and all of that. And so this protagonist is dealing with a lot of stuff. She has the imposter syndrome that so many of the other characters do who didn't grow up with the Jewish know-how that they find themselves in now. But she also has other more personal senses, too, of inferiority complexes. She has an eating disorder. It's one that is a little more complicated than I think just being an eating disorder that's very easily recognized. And she has all this past baggage with an ex-boyfriend who really made her doubt herself and made her lean into her sort of self-deprecation. So this story, in fact, is a really nuanced way with the relationship and with the spiritual elements of the protagonist sort of coming into her own and finding some healing and some self-worth and some love in just a small little touching ways. So again, I really liked this story. I felt like it was a really moving way to show how, a good relationship and a positive relationship with spirituality and religion can really, enrich people's lives. It is the 7th night of Hanukkah. I am visiting my family, and I know this is a really weird setup, but it took forever to even get that menorah lit. I have no idea what's going on. I just want to hopefully just get this done. Speaking of weirdness, I feel like that's how I would describe the story I'm going to talk about tonight. This is Find the River by Matthue Roth. It is about a young boy named Alex, or a young teenager named Alex. Among his friends are a boy who first refers to himself as Hala as a nickname, and there's a female Alex as well. And Hala slowly gets Alex and Alex involved in an Orthodox youth group. And it's a weird sort of youth group. It's like Modern Orthodox, where it seems like people don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. The kids are like, I just want to hang out and meet girls and, that sort of thing. But the rabbinical establishment, I suppose, really gets on their cases. And there's this sort of this religious meetup with rabbis talking about kashrut, the laws of kosher, and other things, and suddenly Alex is thinking, oh, this really is a way I want to be. I want to worry about what I'm putting in my body and how God sees me, and like he's suddenly, like it goes, like it's a little bit of, I don't know, thoughtfulness, but also intimidation at once. But, the group he's with is still a mix. Like, there's Hala, who's like really drinking the Kool-Aid, and then there's Alex, who's trying to encourage Alex to come out to friendlies with the crowd, even though, a lot of people will be eating non-kosher food. And then there's Elie, a rabbi's son, who really is like anti-establishment, and in fact is a quite scary character ultimately. There's a lot of weirdness, I think, in this Orthodox group, and at the end of it, it's supposed to, I don't know, Alex and Alex talk about how, we're just stepping into Orthodoxy right now, and maybe this should and will change us as people, and we'll be much more traditional in 10 years, but not right now. And I don't know, it just seemed strange to me to sort of view your life like that. I mean, I like the idea of people respecting that, you change throughout your life and should be questioning things and changing and spiritually and otherwise, but it just, I don't know though, the way they contextualized it here was really strange to me. Maybe I just don't have that Orthodox upbringing, so I'll just sit with this for a while. It is the 8th and final night of Hanukkah. Still filming in a weird place, still having weird menorah lighting issues even, but a little less weird than last night. And anyway, I'm now here to talk about the final story in this collection. It's called 12 Frames by Nova Ren Suma, and it's an interesting little story about a young woman, teenager, named Simone, who is moving to a new town, kind of trying to reinvent herself, dressing weird, funny. She's in middle school, and she decides she wants to go ahead and sell her estranged great-grandfather's camera. And it's kind of a weird way to introduce herself to the community with her new look in the flea market, which, nobody knows her, but she's dressing so oddly that, it makes an impression. And, amidst all of this wandering around the flea market, we find out that her great-grandfather was a man named Jonathan Cohen who distanced himself, and also the man she was named for, he distanced himself from his Judaism. And so in a way it almost feels like we're comparing his distancing of himself and reinventing himself to her and Simone and what she's doing. But I know that's not really the direction the story intends to go in, that this isn't a story about staying in the shame about Judaism, which is, based on history and the pogroms in World War II and that sort of thing. It's about, being proud of your individuality, but also being proud of your Judaism. Because ultimately, Simone meets this other young girl named Goldie, who is also really unusual and charismatic, and she is selling photos of Jewish heroines from history, and it almost seems like maybe she can see or talk to ghosts or something like that. There's a tiny smidgen of a supernatural element. And so Goldie really gets Simone both to decide to keep the camera, to sort of get those photos developed to see what her great-grandfather was like. And Goldie also, through her own passion for Jewish heroines, gets Simone, interested and prideful about her Jewish heritage, and Goldie especially welcomes her to the club, as it were, because Simone felt, Simone had a bit of imposter syndrome, really, because she has mixed heritage. She's from an interfaith family, and Goldie really says, no, you're still a Jew, although technically she uses the matrilineal descent argument. It's like, well, you're a Jew because according to halacha, although she doesn't use the word for Jewish law, Simone is Jewish. So anyway, I guess it's a story about reclaiming identity, but also maybe sitting comfortably with your own sort of differences as you try to find yourself in your teen years. It's kind of cute. It mostly came together, I suppose. I suppose I also have a soft spot in my heart for it because I also am from an interfaith background, so I know what that imposter syndrome feels like. So yeah, it's a nice way to end this little reading experiment. And that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads review for this book listed down below. And of course, all 8 nights have timestamps in this video. I thought I'd do a little shout out as well to the 2 stories written by the editors of this anthology in this outro. So first we have Some Days You're the Sidekick, Some Days You're the Hero by Catherine Locke. And this one's a little bit meta. It is a fan fiction story written by the main character that's based off of fandom encounters that also embroil into real life relationships in shul. And then there's Be Brave and All by Laura Silverman, which is about a couple of teens from youth group chapters across the country convening for a conference in Washington, D.C., and a couple of them sneak out on Shabbat to go to a protest together. Anyway, I'll be back on this channel imminently to do my final book haul of 2022. I hope all of you who celebrated had a wonderful Hanukkah. Chag Sameach to all of you. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time.